At the heart of racing lies a story, and it is so old, so natural, that we no longer stop to appreciate it, yet we have been telling it forever.
In this crucible, the real heroes are not the cars, they are not the liveries, but they are you, our drivers. You are not interchangeable. You are not faceless numbers in a race. You are the inaugural drivers for CRS, and we are proud to have you with us on this journey.
When the battle raging trackside reflects the battle within, the only path to the light is through the darkness.
Good afternoon, good morning, or good evening, wherever you are tuning in from across the globe. We are live. This is round 2 of the Crown Racing Series, coming to you from the legendary Fuji Speedway. I'm Shannon Yun, and joining me in the studio is Brad Philpott, and with us remotely is Claire Cottingham. Folks, Mount Fuji is playing hide and seek with us today, isn't it?
Yeah, this is not a straightforward race for the drivers. We've got some inclement weather today at Mount Fuji. It's the mountain is just peeking through the clouds, but there's some water on the track. It's been raining, and that's going to really throw a different element at the drivers today and give us some additional entertainment. So the tension out there is pretty high.
Excited, actually. It's going to be a really, really good race. We saw an amazing race there a couple of weeks ago in Silverstone, and here we go again. It's a beautiful track, actually one I've never been to personally. It opened back in 1965. We've witnessed some incredible racing. Of course, you're going to have to remember the Niki Lauda, James Hunt battle that we saw, all the rain that came down, and Niki Lauda stepping out of the car after having his accident a couple of months before, deciding not to race, which essentially handed James Hunt his first title in the Formula One Championship. So it's got some really amazing history around it. But today, though, we're going to see the second round of the Crown Racing Series get underway.
Yes, honestly, looking at the weather forecast, this seems like the drivers are going to have to think on their feet. Split-second strategic decisions married to long-term planning will be key today.
Yeah, the strategy is going to be a massive element today, and it's going to be very different from what we saw at Silverstone. Obviously, with completely different weather conditions, we're not going to be looking at drivers wearing out their slick tyres. It's going to be whether or not they should even use slick tyres. And the drivers are so close in times. I was just checking out the practice times a moment ago. Just 0.3 of a second was separating the top 10 when I last checked, and it's about a second that covers really the entire field. So very, very close. And obviously, like you mentioned, the strategic side of things is going to be really our biggest talking point tonight.
Brad, you're going to have to keep us up to date with practice. Obviously, it's happening right now. And then we're going to have qualifying ahead of the race. And then, of course, we're going to have the race around Fuji Speedway, which is incredibly exciting. We're going to next hear as well from our CRS commissioner very shortly. Qualifying shootout is about 20 minutes. So that's coming up next after practice. Then the race is going to start. So make sure you stay with us because we're going to have an incredible race coming up for you. But I want to have a look back at at what happened at Silverstone. And if you forgot what happened, here is a little look for you.
Series for the first time, green flag is out, and so far so good. That gets to an early lead, side by side for second place. Now already got a 40 off, and there's several cars posting for second place heat off.
Already out into the boundary from also there, Antoine Gianni at 2 corners. Now it is all to play for, down in towards Brooklands and Lockfield, down the inside.
There, Mosca and Peterson kind of dancing a little bit, and Erdele decided he was just going to slip right through that open door. Still side by side for third between Mosca and Peterson. Right now, the Ferrari has that advantage. You're back to 3 wide going into Cox. You don't necessarily want to do that. Just a couple years ago during the British Grand Prix.
He's right there with him. A little bit of contact on the exit, but also Lewis Hamilton still wheel to wheel side by side between these drivers. It's going to be Blunson. It's going to have Bosca right there. David is going to go right there with him. Wheel to wheel. It's all to play for a square down in towards Village and then the loop. This is racing action, which you do not want to miss.
Mercedes, he'll fall back one spot. They're still side by side. Look at this view, a little bit of rubbing going into Cops, and so far. Richardson is into the pits.
Yeah, or an early start just to take an advantage, maybe get out of the traffic a little bit, but we are seeing that with Danny Neo in the Ford Mustang himself versus Kyle Domar. It's wheel to wheel side by side. They've got the Ferrari leading just in front of them, but it's wheel to wheel onto Wellington. Decided it's going to be contact between the two from that angle. Alberti goes round, look, able to catch it.
I was going to say, Woodrow with a nice little run there coming out of Cops and sets up through Maggots. And that was an interesting place to pass. And next ahead of the Pollock, and now Richardson gets out in front of the Ferrari. So you see Caden Richardson. Let's see what happens here if Richardson can stay in front of the two cars. And an all over the speed there as Richardson gets tagged by the racing the foot through the loop, and with the colder tires able to get out there and get ahead of Richardson. By the way, Erdele, fastest lap of the race, 57.587. The drag race is on. Bet that's going to give Bozga a chance to get out front.
Yeah, he was behind in that fight about number 3 position, so now he's going to get that clean air, that width that it got, and he's going to be absolutely flying around this circuit, I would say. We'll wait and see, though, how it will fare, because we just saw what happened with the pit stops with Neg and Richardson. Is that going to happen again?
And Bozga's going to answer the call. He's going to come into the pit. So Woodrow do the same. We'll find out about
incredibly close between the two. But Daniel Whittle is right on the rear, and he's going to get the move done on the timing point. Now, this is the right scene. The wheel to wheel, side by side through the loop onto Wellington.
through Vale and into the bump chicane. There's a spin. Neo with the spin. Hooks and shortcuts, of course.
With Kevin Richardson, who is now the European star, and again,
that was on the Toyota back in the 90s. As Crossboard hit the defensive line on contact between Richardson and Pagnini going into their wonder if Pagnini position. So could there be some sort of damage or spin? As he goes for a spin, was it contact with Pollock? It's all, but we are watching Pollock and Pagnini, and Ned goes off course once again. So Ned has some problems, or Romanian. Dutch driver. He dominated the pre-race, and now he's going to dominate race number 1 and put his name in the history books and be the first winner of the Crown Racing Series.
That position to the German. Is he out of fuel? Because he is majorly slowing down. He's caught unraveled at the end of the crossboard. He's going to have to finish P number 7, Paul at P8, McGee P9, Richardson P number 10.
This has been CRS. This has been your first round at Silverstone. Guys, thank you for being with us. Thank you for watching the race. And I've been Jamie Chambers.
And I'm Shannon Mann. Thank you so much for having us. Oh, that was a great race. Silverstone was, how do you call it? Character building for some of the racers. It was a chaotic opener. We saw Luciano Woodfit lead all weekend and take a comfortable win, having executed an almost straightforward race. But the real drama happened after the checkered flag dropped.
Yes, so there was some drama, and 2 of the podium finishers didn't end up taking those trophies home. You had a couple of pit lane infringements, which dropped David Bozga and Nikolai Pedersen down the order, but only 1 place each. But what it did do was promote Balázs Erdélyi up to 2nd place, and coupled with his points for fastest lap, he got 3 points for that. That means he's sitting there in 2nd position, only 1 point off the lead.
Definitely a really good point, isn't it, Brad? Because we're looking at the beginning of the championship, of course, at this point. We've only had the first round, but every point is incredibly crucial when you're looking to win a championship. And at the moment, Balázs Erdélyi is going to really be wanting to get as many points as he can over Luciano Woodfit. So it's going to be fun to see how it kind of works out now. Penalties after the race, we don't really like to see them as much. We have stewards that work alongside us, so we don't fully know sometimes when these penalties are going to come in, and when they do, obviously sometimes they can be catastrophic for the drivers out there. You never want to see a race decided on penalties, but for Luciano Woodfit, he is leading the championship by that single point.
And that one point is going to be playing on Whitford's mind. He knows he can't relax. But I want to circle back to the actual racing at Silverstone, specifically the battle for the lead. We saw a really interesting strategic play where Bosga actually emerged from the pits ahead of Whitford. How exactly did he pull that off when Whitford had such a gap?
So basically it was what we call an overcut. He just stayed out for longer. He really stretched his fuel, and listening to his post-race interviews, it was really interesting hearing his thought process about this. But yeah, essentially he just waited a couple more laps longer than Whitford, and that meant he could have a shorter pit stop. And actually, as we saw, he emerged from the pits in the lead. It was a very exciting point in the race, probably the most exciting point, because we had this on-track fight momentarily for the lead position when it had seemingly been going all Whitford's way up until that point. But it didn't remain that way, Claire.
No, it didn't remain that way. It was interesting to watch. It was a really risky strategy gamble, actually, with Bosca and his team opting for that alternative strategy. He managed his fuel consumption perfectly in that first stint, which allowed him to stay out one lap longer than Whitford. And like you say, that overcut gave him just enough air to push hard and leapfrog him after that stop. But it just shows what you can do with strategy, doesn't it?
And really, the thing that was key was what happened just after that. Because it's one thing jumping someone in the pits, but it's another thing actually holding on to that position when you're on track fighting. And what we then saw was hot tyres versus cold tyres. So you had the car that had seemingly lost that advantage by having the early pit stop and having obviously a slow outlap on the heavy fuel, the cold tyres, whilst their competitor is out there still on hot tyres and low fuel, lapping quickly, making up that time. But then the roles were reversed the moment the pit stop had happened for Bosca. And he came out of the pits and he was the one with all the disadvantage, fighting against a driver who had his tyres fully up to temperature. And he was able to pretty much immediately overtake him with that extra confidence in the tyres and the brakes.
Brad, do you know what it shows, though? It shows how vulnerable you can be on that outlap. It wasn't just the leaders that were making moves as well. We were seeing it up and down. You've got to give a lot of credit as well, especially to his Dutch counterpart, Whitford's Dutch counterpart, who was Joop de Vos. He had a really impressive race, actually, something to definitely be looking out for this time out in Fuji as well.
Yeah, so De Vos was one of the drivers who benefited from that interesting turn one where Woodrow essentially just lost control. He said it himself in his own interview post-race. He didn't respect the cold tyres enough and lost control of the car. And that really set off a bit of a chain reaction where multiple drivers got damage, went off the track, fell down the order in a way that they wouldn't have been expecting. And it also allowed people like Caden Richardson to move up from 13th to 8th. He avoided all of that incident, managed to slip through. So I think we're going to see a different nature to the race tonight. The drivers will be a little bit more concerned that they're not in Woodrow's position. They don't want to be. They don't want to be the one causing problems for other people. And Woodrow himself was kind of devastated afterwards that had happened. He said that that doesn't kind of live up to his own expectations. So despite the weather being a little bit dodgy, as you can see behind us here on the screens, we might actually see a safer first corner tonight. Let's hope so anyway.
Brad, I feel like we are going to massively talk more about the weather and what the track looks like, but I feel like you want to talk us through what happened at turn one, that incident that caused that immediate domino effect that we saw, which blew apart some races from the start. It was quite a chaotic start, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, from my point of view, it's quite straightforward. It's quite a simple one. As I said, Woodrow just went in a little bit too fast on the cold tyres. And we've heard this a million times, but you can't win the race at turn one, but you can certainly lose it. And that dropped him down much further than he would have been expecting. As I mentioned, also some of his competitors as well. He wouldn't have been many people's best friend at turn one. And so turn one at Fuji is totally different. It's not a high-speed right-hander. It's a really tight hairpin. So the drivers are going to be arriving there very, very quickly, even from a standing start. The straight's so long, they're going to be arriving in turn one heavily on the brakes, but the apex speed is much, much slower. So, provided nobody mucks up and misses their braking point, hopefully it'll be tidier. There's a bit of space on the outside for runoff. Let's just keep our fingers crossed that everyone makes it through. But if they don't, that'll give us something else to talk about.
Brad, talk us through then this track, because we've got a lot of track challenges, haven't we? There's that really long straight, which is 1.5 kilometers long. It's just under a mile. Then it goes into this technical little twisty final sector as well. And we're seeing the difference between the Mustang and the Ferrari, aren't we, in terms of how they both take to the track differently. The Mustangs seem to be very good on the straights and the Ferraris are more technical, would you say?
Yeah, this is actually probably the ideal circuit to see the way those two different types of car, the Mustang and the Ferrari, which seem to be the two most competitive cars currently in this series, see the kind of differences in the way they perform. So as you mentioned, massive long straight. It's a straight that's really long, even in a Formula One car. So in a GT3 car like we've got here tonight, they are full throttle for a really, really long time. And of course, then when they get to turn one, they've got a lot of weight and inertia behind them, and they don't remotely have the kind of braking capacity that some other prototypes or single-seaters would have. So judging your braking point into turn one is going to be key. But that long straight is going to play into the Mustang's hands. The Mustangs seem to be really, really fast on the straight. And as the lap progresses, it goes through some nice high-speed sweepers where, I don't know, both of those cars will have their strengths and their weaknesses. But into the final twisty sector, the mid-engine Ferrari will probably have that little advantage. So it switches around. The Mustangs maybe pulled a gap on the long, fast sections. Then the Ferrari comes into its own when you need to actually navigate some tight corners. So it's going to be really, really different. But there's one other car that I want to talk about, and that's the Porsche. Because the Porsche will be really good in terms of traction. And there's not many people running the Porsche. In fact, I think it's only one driver. And that means in these difficult weather conditions, we might see something different to what we saw at Silverstone. I don't think it's necessarily going to be Mustang versus Ferrari out there. Let's see. But one thing to note is that in Crown Racing Series, you can't change the setup. So however these cars behave is how they're going to behave for the whole season. The drivers can't play around with different tuning options. The cars are as they are, and that's because we want to focus on the driving, not on the engineering side of this. There are plenty of other series where you can find an advantage from tweaking the suspension over thousands of laps. Here, this is about the driving, and so the cars are going to handle like they handle, and the drivers will have to live with the consequences of their season-long car selection. And as the tracks change, different cars are going to come into their own.
Right, now I feel like we really have to address the elephant in the room, or rather the storm clouds above the room. The radar is looking rather ominous.
Yeah, so I think we can safely say it's going to be a wet qualifying. The practice has been wet, and I think that's going to create some issues for drivers. They will, of course, have been doing a lot of practice, so this isn't going to be a surprise for the drivers. They knew that this was what the weather forecast was here, but it's certainly not just going to be a carbon copy of what we saw at Silverstone. So maybe expect different drivers from what we saw at the first round towards the top of the timesheets. And even the race start is likely to be damp. But the weather won't necessarily stay that way throughout the entire event, Claire.
Now, Brad, this is where it's going to get really exciting, isn't it? Because what tyre do they decide to start on? Basically, if it starts a bit wet out there and you decide to go out on the wet tyres, those wet tyres, when the track starts to dry up, will completely burn out, and you're going to have to come out and you're going to have to change your tyres. So you're going to risk having an extra pit stop. If you start on the quote-unquote drier tyre while it's wet out there, you're going to really struggle, because you're going to have to attempt to not slip off the track for the first 3 or 4 laps. So it's a real struggle here to decide exactly what you want to do. Now, will we see the top 10 maybe go out on the wet tyre and decide that they're all going to take this extra pit stop, or are we going to see them go out and risk it? I don't know, Brad. How do you think that's going to go?
So I've raced in the UK for most of my life, and as such, I've experienced a lot of changeable weather conditions on race day. And one particular event springs to mind. I raced in British touring cars in 2020, in one particular race at Brands Hatch. It was damp, but you could see there was potentially a dry line forming, and I was advised by my team to go on the slicks for exactly the reason you were just talking about there, because you don't want to burn out the wets early doors. And by the end of the race, it was much drier, and I was a lot faster than the cars that had opted for wets. The problem was, for the first 3 quarters of the race, I was miles slower than all the people that had gone out on the wet. So it didn't matter that some people burnt out their wets. They were so far in front by that point that my slick gamble had turned out to be the kind of consequences of most gambles, which is it hadn't paid off. So my advice for the drivers, not that they're listening to me, would be something that Martin Brundle often says, which is just be on the right tyre for the current conditions. rather than gambling on something that might not happen. So let's see whether the drivers listen to me.
That's so interesting, Brad, though, because I don't think we're going to see that at all. I think we're going to see a real mixture because, like you say, you want to go out on the right tyre at the right time, but then you have to take that pit stop. And then, like you say, of course, we're going to see in that scenario, yes, you're going to lose time overall, but is the cost of the pit stop going to be worse? Like, that's the gamble you're taking, surely.
We're going to find out.
Yeah, and just to throw a final wrench in the works, Brad, I'm seeing reports that we might get more rain in the final laps of the race.
Great. I'm glad I'm not the one that has to drive it. Like Claire said, obviously, that just means if you're out there and you have gambled on your slicks and it's working out brilliantly, you might think everything's rosy, and then that rain shower comes at the end of the race and it ruins everything. So we're not going to know who's come out on top until right at the end.
Not forgetting, of course, they do have that mandatory pit stop that you've got to do, which will factor into everything. I think a few people are going to have a bit of a headache going into this race, but it makes it so spicy, doesn't it? How exciting that we're going to have a wet qualifying session exactly when you want the rain to come down, when there's the gambles of the fastest lap, and we'll see slower laps because of that rain coming down, of course. And then when they get out onto the track and it's going to be damp, which then dries, the conditions completely change. Brad, as a driver yourself, like you were saying just then, you've been out in these conditions, you know what it's like to try and get a feel of the track once it's started to dry. What are the challenges the drivers will face when it starts to dry up, even if they're on the right tyre?
Yeah, so part of the challenge is not eating all your sweeties too soon, because the drivers might feel, oh, I've got some grip coming now, this is great. And then they actually end up leaning on the tyres too hard, and they maybe want to preserve them for later. And we've been talking about tyres. One thing we haven't really been talking about is fuel consumption. Now, something that really nearly won Bosca the race back at Silverstone was eking out the fuel, making it last longer so the pit stop shorter, so deliberately fuel saving during a stint. So when he had the pit stop, he was stationary for less time. Now, that's something which is still relevant tonight. They're going to be using different amounts of fuel depending on how hard they're pushing, how long they're on the throttle. Naturally, it being a wet race, or partly wet, you're going to use less fuel because you're off the throttle for longer. But if you can use even less than your competitors by spinning the wheels less, not being as aggressive on the throttle, lifting and coasting, getting off the throttle earlier before the corners, you might buy yourself that little bit more time to not be stationary in the pits. So the fuel and the tyres, and just the general pressure of competing when it's treacherous out there, it's all going to play into it tonight. I can't wait to see it.
So fuel saving, tire choice, and a wet track. Drivers like Igor Koss and Richardson, who we just mentioned, love a chaotic race. So they probably would love this themselves. Chaos usually breeds opportunity.
Yeah, well, obviously, there is a very strict penalty system for driving etiquette. We saw from the last race as well. Driving etiquette is something that CRS takes incredibly seriously. So there is a no-do policy in that sort of way. What I just wanted to mention about fuel consumption just quickly, Brad, when you mentioned that, we did actually see one of the drivers last time out in Silverstone. I think it was Konrad Kula, who ran out of fuel. So it's just showing how important that fuel consumption really is. But back to the penalties, if you're picking up penalties for being too aggressive, that is something that you're going to have to learn going into the next round. You can't be making silly mistakes and picking up penalties. That is where you start costing yourself a championship. And for some of the drivers that are really battling it out there, already leading the championship, we see Luciano Revered, who's already leading the championship, but just by that single point. Penalties will absolutely cause them a chance not to win this championship, and that is not what we want to see going into round 2 in Fuji.
Yeah, one mistake tonight can end your race either by meeting the barriers or by picking up a penalty, which drops you down the order. So the drivers have so many things to juggle this evening, notwithstanding the weather as well. So there's a lot of pressure on those guys, especially the people right at the top. Whitver and Erdi, they're really, really close together. There's some pressure to not drop the ball now. I know it's early in the championship, but if they've done this well already, they're gonna just have that at the back of their mind. They're in a good position. They don't want to fall down the order. They will have been feeling great since the last race, so it could all go wrong tonight. So I
Don't say
believe-
that, Brad. We can't have it all going wrong. That's not how we've got to do
could.
it. It's going to be
saying
exciting.
it
No, that's not how we.
Okay, so speaking of a couple of those people that we've just been mentioning, the qualifying session is currently on. So it's not long until we're heading to the race, but right now it is a couple of those drivers we mentioned. In fact, the two drivers that finished 1-2 on the road at Silverstone who are topping the timed in qualifying as it stands. As I mentioned, it's not finished yet, but we've got David Bozka currently on the provisional pole, followed 0.4 of a second behind, which is quite a big gap in second place by Whitford. So two of those heavy hitters. And Erdi is not that far down either. So our second place driver in the championship is down in 5th position. But as you tend to see in the wet, the gaps are a little bit bigger than in the dry. So drivers are getting to grips at different rates here. And yeah, it's not quite as tightly packed. Although, as I say that, it's Gregory Hoverson who's just taken the top spot. So by 1.5 tenths. So it's all changing. We've got a few minutes left of qualifying yet, around about 8 minutes to go before we know the final standings. Anything can happen. Anyone from anywhere in the field here could move their way up to the top. So I'll try and keep you updated as the qualifying session continues.
The engines are
A couple
firing
of
up
minutes.
and the rain clouds are gathering over Mount Fuji.
Yes, they are. I think the rain clouds have already gathered, actually.
Yes.
So it's raining reasonably firmly. I don't have video currently of the session, but I'm seeing a rapidly changing scoreboard just here. We do have live timing, which you can check out as well. Bozka's gone back to the top. So it's Bozka, Hoverson, and a driver we've not mentioned at all, actually. The American Kyle Domark is now in 3rd. Whitford is down to 5th position. So this is moving
Brad,
all
how
over the
we-
place currently.
How are we feeling, Brad, at this point about who's going to be on pole position? How important is it to get pole position at a track like this? Is it a track that we see often that someone's got pole position and they're going to run away with it? Or are we going to see something like what we saw at Silverstone on the first lap?
I think it's a circuit that in an aerodynamic dependent car, a prototype, a single seater, something like that, it's slightly difficult to overtake in a lot of the circuit, although the long straight is clearly a good opportunity. In these kind of cars where they're not really dependent on downforce, I think overtaking is possible. In the wet though, it just obviously throws this complete curveball. You know, different lines can make a huge difference. Drivers making small mistakes. We've not seen it, but I guarantee some people have lost control or gone wide or whatever already in the qualifying and the practice. Those kind of things can certainly happen. So I wouldn't say just because we have, say, for example, Hoverson currently on the pole, if he does eventually get pole, I wouldn't say that it's going to just stay like that. I don't think it's going to be a single file kind of a race. Having said that, if you are out in front and you are starting from the pole, you don't have a massive face full of spray and everyone's windscreen wipers will be working overtime in this race. You definitely don't want to be the driver down in 15th or 18th or wherever and have 17 other cars spray in front of you.
Brad, that's such a good point about the spray, of course, because we're going to see that at the beginning of the race, aren't we? Qualifying, obviously, is affected by that spray. But if you're going to be starting at the front, you get that advantage. But that could be a real issue for these drivers on those first few laps. We're not only thinking about tyre, we're not only thinking about strategy, we're not only thinking about not picking up penalties, we're also making sure that we're in front so we don't get the spray. Not much.
Exactly. Yeah, there's a few reasons to start out front, aren't there? Aside from the obvious that you want to be as far forward as possible. Since we last updated, the lap times have got closer. So I mentioned it's about half a second or so, 0.4 between the first two. You've now got the top 4 drivers all separated by around about 1/10 of a second. In fact, exactly 1/10 of a second splits the top 4. So it's now getting very, very tight, as you'd expect from an elite field of drivers like we have here in CRS.
Yeah, also, just so you know, Brad, you're the only one from me. I haven't got the timing screen because mine's completely disappeared. So you are literally feeding me everything I need to know about this qualifying session. So who is looking fast in terms of which cars are looking fast in terms of Ferrari? Are we seeing the Mustangs? Who is really looking like that this could be a track that they can go out there and pick up the maximum points that they could?
That's a great question. Right now, it's the Mustang on provisional pole, followed by 2 Ferraris and 3 more Mustangs. So it's very similar to Silverstone, actually. We've got quite a split between the brands and the weight distributions of the different cars. Obviously, these being GT3 cars, they're essentially performance equalised, but that can't get away from the different driving dynamics that a car with an engine out the front or an engine in the middle is going to have. They are going to behave differently, even though over a lap, the officials have tried to equalise the cars as much as possible. So we've got, and it's changed again, we've got Ford, Ferrari, Ford, Ferrari, Ford, Ford, Ford. So it's a nice split. What we're not seeing is some of those other brands up the front. So there's a couple of Porsches in the middle and at the back, and we've got the one Corvette, the sole Corvette and the sole Mercedes right down the back, 13th and 15th currently, in the hands of Woodrow and Richardson. So if Woodrow does repeat his Turn 1 antics, he won't be in the way of as many people this time. But he won't be very happy being down there at the moment.
Are we going to see, though? I find it really interesting that we've got so many, obviously, Fords and so many Ferraris, and only one person picked, obviously, like you say, Ryan Woodrow picked the Corvette, and the Porsche, Joop de Vos, and also the Mercedes in Cadden Richardson. What would have been their thinking ahead of the season to pick whichever car they picked?
I think, as we mentioned earlier, sometimes just going for something different might play into your hands when you get to a track that suits that car. And as we speak about this, as I was saying, the Porsches are nowhere. Joop de Vos has just moved his Porsche 911 up to 2nd position, and he's just 2/10 off the top, which is still Gregory Hoverson. So we are going to the race very shortly, actually. There's not long left in this qualifying session. There's only under 3 minutes to go. So we'll shortly be heading over to our race crew. But I'll give you the top 5 rundown before we go. So currently on the provisional pole with 2.5 minutes to go, we've got Gregory Hoverson in the Mustang. Second, it is our championship leader, Luciano Whitfoot. Third, as I say that, Balázs Erdei has just moved up to 2nd. And David Bozka has just taken the top spot. So this is ever changing. So it's Bozka from Hoverson, Erdei, Whitfoot, and de Vos. That is our top 5, which is a stellar top 5 and bodes well for the race.
Just quickly looking at... Go on.
Sorry, Claire, I was just going to say, I think it's time, actually, that we're throwing over to our race crew.
Okay, well, don't go anywhere. We're going to round 2. Of course, we've got Fuji, which is up next. And let's see what happens this time round.
The race for the crown continues with round 2 of the Crown Racing Series, which comes from the Fuji Speedway. 4.563 kilometers of racetrack or 2.835 miles in old money. 16 turns lie ahead, and there is rain in the air just to make life a little bit more difficult for the 17 drivers out on track. If you weren't with us at Silverstone for the curtain raiser, it's a 50-minute race to come with a mandatory pit stop. The cars are a mixture of GT3 machinery from Ford, Ferrari, Porsche, Corvette and Mercedes, with a fixed setup to provide maximum focus on the drivers who have taken to the circuit from qualifying. And as we've already heard, it is mighty close out there. The checkered flag has just been waved, so we'll run through the grid very shortly. Adam Reed alongside me, Chris Stevens, in the commentary box. And Adam, I mean, this rain is going to make life so difficult for the drivers, and a very different picture to what we saw at the first race.
Chris, absolutely glad to be alongside you. I'm really looking forward to seeing what we've got on today, because this is going to be a super close encounter. You know, just have a look at the qualifying times. 1.2 seconds is the entire field spread. That was very much the case when we went to Silverstone. I believe the gap was about 2 seconds amongst the 17 drivers that we do have here as well. We now just watch some of them make their way around the cooldown lap as we see those last couple of moments just making those final improvements.
Yeah, final improvements coming in right down to the death of the session. And it was David Bosger in the Ferrari who just sneaked over the line to score provisional pole. But there are still cars coming across the line. Andrea Panini in the Porsche going up to third fastest. So we heard Brad talk about the rear engine car doing very well in the traction zones in these conditions. Anybody who's watched the Nürburgring 24 Hours will remember Kevin S. epic drive from 11th to 1st a few years ago, but still the front row is not settled as Alexander Paulik now goes up to the front row of the grid and only 0.02 of a second away from David Bosger, who is third in the championship going into this one. Remember, he was the driver who was challenging Whitvoot for the lead in the second part of that race. And now every car is across the line, and it is Bosger on pole position, and an incredibly close field, as you mentioned there, Adam.
Yeah, absolutely. Really looking forward to seeing how this is all going to pan out. So we'll bring the grid in just a moment. But you're seeing what appears to be some sunny skies. But here comes the grid.
So it's David Bosger for the first time on pole position in the Ferrari. It's an all-Ferrari front row with Alexander Paulik alongside him. Mihai Neg up in third position, the Romanian ahead of Andrea Panini in the Porsche. Then it's Joop de Vos, another of the Stuttgart cars, with Carl Domack in sixth position. And then comes Gregory Hoverson, who was fastest for quite a bit of that session. And then Igor Kos inside the top 10 with Balázs Ardeli and Nikolai Pedersen completing the top 10. And then Silverstone winner and championship leader Luciano Whitvet down in 11th position ahead of Conrad Kula, Cody Cosford, Danny Neo, Caden Richardson and Ryan Woodrow in 16th position in the Corvette. And then at the back of the grid is Federico Alberti, the Italian, in the Italian car. Now, this is a very spicy grid indeed. The first of the Fords in third position. We talked about the Armada there. They're locking up the sort of back end of the top 10. But we're talking about drivers here. Alexander Paulik, for example, in the number 32 car, who didn't even qualify inside the top 10 at Silverstone, and Mihai Neg in the number 7 machine, who qualified 8th at Silverstone. So this is just completely topsy-turvy to what we saw in the first round. And it goes to show, Adam, how different these conditions can make the order. But it's looking actually pretty dry and pretty sunny for the start of the race at the very least.
Yeah, these qualifying positions are going to be very, very unusual. You know, you're seeing some of the top guys at the back of the grid, maybe towards the midfield, and you'll see some of maybe the more lower guys you saw at Silverstone. You know, they've really thrown the cat amongst the pigeons here, because you've seen both the Porsches, they were right down the field during the qualifying phase, and then they managed to launch themselves up. So be aware of what Panini and de Vos will be able to do. And of course, with the 10th and 11th, those two positions having a combined iRacing of 20,000, that is an unbelievable combined total. But we get set now for round 2 here at Fuji, and I wonder, Chris, what are going to be the things to look out for? Well, definitely the weather, because you can see there the spray kicking off the back of the rear tyres. So this is telling us, I think, multiple stories going on.
And we do have a mixture of dry and wet tyres. So we can see pole sitter David Bosger has opted for the dry tyres. So has Mihai Neg, Andrea Panini, and Joop de Vos. Conrad Kula, Danny Neo, Ryan Woodrow, Caden Richardson, and Luciano Whitvet, who for some reason on the timing has dropped down to 16th position, but they're all on the dry tyre. Everyone else is on wets. What on earth is going to happen when we get down to turn one for the first time of asking? There's going to be competing levels of grip from these machines, but it is David Bosger, the blue and yellow Ferrari, on the right-hand side of the grid as we currently look at it. Alexander Paulik, the white Castrol car, on the right-hand side as we're now looking at it. Drivers left. Now remember, they have to go through the grid hatchings, and for the second time, the race for the crown is on in Fuji, and a lovely start there from David Bosger, and Mihai Neg in the Ford immediately pouncing into second place. The superior speed from the Coyote V8 at the front of that Ford showing well. Remember, he's also on the dry tyres, so it's advantage slicks as they make their way into the first corner, and a much cleaner start compared to Silverstone. A bit of bumping and shuffling in the middle of the pack as drivers have various amounts of grip with the mixture of wets and dry tyres on at the moment. And off the road goes the race leader. So that was the difficulty we were seeing there with the slick tyre, and at the first left-hander, we're already seeing him struggle for grip, and he's fallen down to third position, maybe even down to fourth. So it's Alexander Paulik on the wet tyre who goes into the lead, and goodness me, the pole sitter is falling all the way down the order.
Yeah, absolutely. A bit of contact there, I believe, involving the 24. They head their way through the next sequence of corners. Now they're going to be diving down towards one of the hot spot overtaking spots here, and you're just trying to find your way, really suss out the grip in these early stages. It's going to be so difficult, especially for the likes of Paulik, who's leading the way. He has no idea what these conditions are going to feel like. If we head through the chicane, it's getting very rough and tumble up in there as well. We've got the Porsche there of Joop de Vos, and there's a slide there, 2 spinners in the background. That's going to be a bit more carnage and a bit more race hurting there. The Corvette joining the fray as well.
Yeah, so Ryan Woodrow and Danny Neo, that was the number 18 Ford getting in there. And I think there's been a spin for Luciano Whitvet in the earlier stages of the lap as well. I caught a glimpse of a white and blue Ferrari going around, and that would be the championship leader. Now, as I said at the end of turn one, it was advantage slick. Well, at the end of lap one, the top 6 are all on wet tyres. So it's Alexander Paulik and Gregory Hoverson, who didn't even finish inside the top 10 at Silverstone. And here he is battling for the lead in that NGK Sparkplugs sponsored Ford. Slightly further back, we've got Cody Cosford in the blue and yellow Ferrari going toe-to-toe with the Lion GP Mustang of Erdely, and it's Cosford on the inside into turn 2 that takes 5th position away. Those are both cars with wet tyres on as it stands.
Yeah, indeed, those wet tyres really looking to thrive in these conditions. You see the spray just continuously picking up, and I think that's where kind of the advantage is. You know, you're seeing that spray being picked up. You know, the wet tyres are being cooled down. They're not in. They're not going to be overheating whatsoever. So they're in the right conditions. I think we're starting right up at the top end. In fact, I believe it was a pole sitter. You know, he's really struggling. He's already 13 seconds behind the race leader. We now see Erdely just carrying on there in P5, just trying to defend there from Cosford. But he's going to be wanting to make his way up the field. We have a look at a replay here.
Yeah, then we're going to see what happened to Whitvet on the opening lap of the race, and a tag there from one of the Mustangs and collected by Alberti as well. So that was the Kyle Domack Mustang that Whitvet made contact with, and that would explain why Kyle Domack is actually in the pit lane at the moment, as is Alberti.
Yeah, I wondered if they had a little bit of a collision between the two, but yep, it looks like they've both got damage. I haven't seen any of them moving either. We'll see what happened with Carl Domark. So, you see the front right there, the suspension is completely bent. He pulls off to the side of the road and thinks, yeah, I'm not going anywhere further. So that's... What about the Polish driver, Konrad Kula, in towards the chicane chicane, and yeah, just having a bit of a ding dong there, and he just loses the rear there. Yeah, usually we were speaking about that in the pre-show with the Porsches having really good traction. Looks like the Ferrari at that point just had absolutely nothing and was some very, very treacherous conditions.
So it is Ferrari leading an armada of Fords at the moment. Alexander Paulik leads by almost a second, doing the fastest lap of the race, 1:48.5, lapping around 11 seconds away from the lap record, which is an Alexander Imperatori lap record set in a Nissan GTR about 8 years ago. So that gives you an indication as to the time being lost in these conditions. And remember, all top 6 of those cars on wet tyres. But we may well see the slick tyre come into it later, because there's not an awful lot of spray, as we see dramas for Andrea Pinini, the number 99 car, the black Porsche, going through what looks like turns 14 and 15. No, it's around the 300R, actually, heading towards the chicane. So that was actually on the exit of turn 6. And yeah, we're going to see what happens to Panini. So running wide, going into the chicane. I think I might have identified the corner correctly the first time around. So that was going into the chicane and then coming out into the third sector. So right now he's tucked up behind Danny Neo and Ryan Woodrow. The Soul Corvette, the pink Dollywood car.
Indeed, that's going to be, they're all in a line at the moment, so they're all heading down the straight, and they're going to have a long amount of slipstream there from that pink Corvette, and we'll just have to see if there's going to be potential move, because Danny Neo is tucked up right behind the said Corvette, and he will try and maneuver his way in towards turn number 1, but it looks like he's just maybe saving a little bit of fuel, lifting off, but with that inside line he should be able to make the move unless the Corvette does have any traction, which it seemingly does, and in towards 2 and then in towards 3 it goes. This is going to be pretty tight on board with the side camera. Well, this is going to be tight through 2 and 3. They're going to be through that sequence. I think one of them's going to be forced off wide a little bit. That's going to be the Ford Mustang, but they'll get through the next couple of corners, and including these two trying to get in the background there.
Yeah, and Whitford, the championship leader, showing his nose in that as well, in the blue and white Ferrari, on the recovery after that lap 1 contact. And this is not what we thought we'd be seeing Whitford, who near enough dominated the first round of the season. What we'd expected to see him doing in this race. So back down into the chicane we go. Danny Neo, the Walk Racing colours on his car, just ahead of the Corvette. Meanwhile, this is side by side for 5th position once again between Cody Cosford and Balazs Erdely, who did take the fastest lap of the race at Silverstone, and it's the Line GP Ford on the inside into turn 1 that takes 5th position back again. So these two continuing to have a bit of a ding-dong out there. So Cody Cosford, the young Scotsman. Oh, big crash going on to the start and finish straight. That's Conrad Kula, and big rear suspension damage as it's crabbing down the start and finish straight. That is going to have to come into pit lane for repairs.
And that's going to be awful news for him. Now we'll have to see what this battle ensues. 2 or 3 or 4 may be involved in this one, all on the dry compound tyre. So it looks like Neo, it's just sticking ahead in all of this, and I think Woodrow is going to try and maybe come back at the Ford Mustang, because this time a lap ago they were side by side, and it looks like Neo had to concede the place, but we'll have to see what happened with Konrad Kula, the Polish driver, heading in towards that final corner, clipped the curb on the right hand side, and the car just pretty much went there, Chris.
Yeah, it certainly did. Had a spin while fighting with Alexander Paulik last time out at Silverstone, but a Reiter esports driver, so the official esports team of the Reiter engineering team that competes in LMP3 competition. as Luciano Whitvet on the inside of Ryan Woodrow there, the Ferrari on the inside of the Corvette, heading down into the heavy braking zone at turn 10, and Whitvet goes through to take 12th position now. And then it'll be Danny Neo just in front of him. So of the runners on slick tyres, they are currently 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th for Whitvet. So still a long way to go for the Dutchman. With that 10k I rating that you alluded to, they're the highest I rating in the field. But this is certainly not how we thought today was going to go. I'd be interested to hear what happened to him at the start, really, because he was due to start from 11th position and then seemingly started the race actually much closer to the rear of the field. But here's our race leader, Alexander Paulik, who continues to lead Gregory Hoverson by roughly 1 second. And it is the two NGK Sparkplug sponsored cars that are line astern at the moment, as Hoverson and Nikolai Pedersen are in 2nd and 3rd. And this was my nightmare scenario for this race, because those two liveries are absolutely identical, because they both compete in the Apex Racing Academy and for the Door Esports team in the Digital NLS series. So although Crown Racing Series is very much a driver-focused series, and it's the drivers who come and take part in the championship, we don't have any teams entered. Of course, a lot of these guys competing in other championships with various teams. We've got 3 drivers from Walk Racing, for example, the Lion GP driver, Delhi, that we already alluded to, and these 2 drivers from the Door Esports team as well. Now, that was a bit of a scruffy lap there from Alexander Paulik, and the gap has come down an awful lot as we approach 11 minutes into this race.
Indeed, it just seemed like those guys are really going to be maybe having a slow burner of a battle here, because you see that kind of quartet of Ford Mustang. I'm sure all of them would love to be involved, but it looks like Hoverson and Pedersen have really been the ones that have managed to gallop away from the pair of Kos and Dully. So I'll be interested to see how this all pans out, especially with Paulik. Will he be able to gallop his way in the prancing horse away from these two, or will he maybe push them into a trio battle, to a quintet battle? Now we're back with the dry runners. We're just seeing that number 69 there of Joop de Vos. I was interested to see how well he did. He was really the cat amongst the pigeons, but it just doesn't look like that dry tyre is working away here. You're seeing the gap between Cosworth and Bosca. That is really telling to the gap to the leading. You're just seeing that extending and extending and extending. It looks like de Vos has gone fuel saving mode a little bit of lifting off. So by doing that, you're not using any of the fuel to coat, you're just coasting your way down towards the first corner, and then with the brake you're just managing to slow the car down. Yeah, giving up the ghost of what seemingly is 2 positions there, because there goes what is seemingly seemingly I think Whitvote's I think now going on through. Yeah, he has. He's now up to 11th.
What's interesting here is that David Bosger, who is the top car on dry tyres at the moment in 7th position, is 25 seconds behind the next car, 30 off the race leader. And according to the timing screen, still lapping about 1 second slower than the next car. The slick car's only in the 1-minute 50s at best, whereas all of the wet runners are still within the 1:49s. So it's still very much advantage wet tyre at the moment. And of course, what these guys would have been hoping for was that if they were going to have to make a switch, they could do it during their fuel stop. But they've lost so much time in the first stage of this race that I can't see any of the drivers who started on the slick tyre fighting for the podium at this stage.
Indeed, I think I want to kind of, because if you were a wet tyre and you're aware of the timing difference, would it be worth pitting or just staying out that little bit longer so you can get a clearer idea of what we expect?
Well, Ryan Woodrow, meanwhile, trying to take a place back from Luciano Whitvet. So that's 11th position being disputed as they go over the timing line. It's the big thumping Corvette V8 in the middle of the Corvette. Oh, he loses it under braking and wipes out the championship leader going into the first corner. Ryan Woodrow in a big accident in there with Luciano Whitworth, who has towed to the pit lane. Oh my goodness, when it rains, it pours.
Yeah, unbelievable. That is not really expected in this race. But yeah, we'll just have a look and see what happened to Ryan Woodrow. I think he just lost the car. I think maybe just had the on the wet line, it seemed like potentially. I thought it may be down to a braking issue, but no, I think I just managed to catch a bit of a puddle there on the dry tyres, remember, and then cast the car into the side there a bit, votes.
And you've got that pit exit line as well, which I'm sure is very, very slippery. As meanwhile, Alexander Paulik is coming under increasing pressure for the race lead from the two chasing Fords, Hoverson and Peterson, who we mentioned are teammates in other championships. Will they start acting like teammates in this one? They've both got the same livery on the car, and they're both attacking the same guy at the moment.
Yeah, indeed. It does seem like, well, let's have a look at this one, because it's Ederle and Koss, both Ford Mustangs, having a big old ding-dong door-to-door on that part here. And it looks like Ederle has to get up the ghost on that part, but it looks like Igor Koss has gone a little bit too deep into the left-hander. And how will this affect him through the right-hander? Well, he's just now having to, he's just having to go defensive there. Ederle thought about down the inside. That's a big move. They've collided, and off goes the blue Ford Mustang, and Ederle might have to get a penalty post-race for that one, as squeezing on through, I think that was Cosford. So he said thank you very much for that, and he's up into fourth place. Meanwhile, Igor Koss is feeling a bit of sorrow, a little bit of anger as well at the same time. Let's have a look at this one, Chris.
Yeah, real shame for Igor Koss there, as he had Ederle right up the inside, heading towards turn 6, and the Mustang going around, able to continue, but I wouldn't be at all surprised to discover that there is some damage to the left rear corner on that car. Meanwhile, last time around, David Bosger, the lead slick tyre runner, just did the fastest lap of the race, a 1:47.9, so the slick tyres finally coming into play about 60 minutes into this race. The problem he's got, he's 26 seconds behind the leader, but he's really closing up now. He's quicker than the race leader, and of course he will have just gained by all that melee that was happening between Ederle and Cosford as well, that the Scotsman did benefit greatly from. So it's still Paulik leading the way on the wet tyres, the 37-year-old from Leipzig. As still Cosford and Ederle are scrapping away for this fourth position. They're about 6 seconds behind the podium battle now. And that bit blinking for Cody Cosford there. That is not going to be encouraging for Ederle at all. Ederle, the 18-year-old from Győr in Hungary. I think the youngest driver in the field, if not certainly one of the youngest.
Indeed has been impressed to see his progress. Of course, it's quite a new championship, and I'm sure that in the years to come he will be a formidable racer. But yeah, for now he is just trying to learn his craft, and he's got, of course, the blinking Cody Cosford right in behind him in that Ferrari 296 GT3. Of course, the Ferrari, who is quite aerodynamically stable, I'd say, is looking pretty nifty. So we'll cut back here to the lead of the race, because now we see Hoverson is just having a look at a couple of gaps that may be appearing in the side of Paulik. He'll have to see if there is an attack down his water number 1. But again, I think this is just going to be a slow burner here, Chris, because we know that you can just see that Hoverson and Peterson, both Ford Mustang, just pulling off to the right-hand side there to cool the tyres down here. And get some wet patches on those wet tyres. So that's going to be so important, because if they start overheating, that's going to be a massive problem for the Ford Mustang and Paulik. Really something to keep an eye out for, because the minute they start really dying off, they'll have to come into the pit lane and maybe change that strategy.
Well, you would think as well, with the track moving towards the slick tyre now, maybe this is the time to do the fuel stop and get onto the slick tyre before Bosger makes up too much of the ground, because he was 5 seconds quicker than the race leader on the previous lap. 1:45.7 for Bosger in 7th position, 1:50 for Alexander Paulik in the lead of the race. Surely the time to come in now and get onto that dry tyre, but then we're expecting rain towards the end of the race as well. Do you want to keep the wet tyre for a little bit longer? Do you want to put that on as late as humanly possible so that you've got more grip when the rain does arrive? I mean, there's so many options that these guys can take.
Yeah, indeed. But remember, there is a mandatory stop. So, you do have to make it at some point. And I just wonder if it is best to do it around about now, because, those tyres, I believe that they will make the full 15 minutes. But, if you have rain, they will do the time that they need to do within this drying track, and then you all have that open option of, okay, I've been on the best tyre that I needed to for the last 20 minutes. Now I just need to figure out when the best time is to come in for wets. So this is going to be a massive question mark for these for the wet tyre. But it's not just the wet tyre runner that are thinking, it's also the dry tyre, because they need to make a mandatory pit stop as well. But at what point do they do that? Again, wet tyres are also going to be a potential for the end. I'm sure they're going to have that waiting right out at the front of the pit garage. So yeah, it's a question on 2 different stories here.
Interesting to me that Paulik is not looking for the wet patches, whereas all the cars behind him are. What does Paulik know that everyone else doesn't, I wonder? Because he's not concerned about burning through the wet tyre, or at least trying to keep the temperatures under control. I mean, he's very much in control of this race at the moment, but lost another 5 seconds or so to David Bosger, who's now on the back of Igor Kos, the last car on the wet tyre, as it stands, in 6th position. So Bosger, having been about 30 seconds off the race lead just a few laps ago, looks like he's going to start to make his way through the wet tyre runners. And in fact, he's already through. So there is Bosger. Remember, he started on pole position and slid back in the early stages of the race, as the wet tyre was the preferred tyre for the conditions. But he's now starting to make his way back through the cars that started on the wet tyres. Dispatch of Igor Kos up into 6th position. The next car is Cody Cosford, 6 seconds up the road.
Yeah, indeed. We'll have to see how that all kind of pans out now, because Bosger is now becoming a thorn in the side of these wet tyre runners. He's still sliding out of corners, is the Belgian driver. But he is really thundering his way on towards the next, of course, the next car, which is going to be Kos. And in comes Igor Kos, the Ford Mustang, pulls his way into pit lane and is going to be the first pitter in this entire field. So Igor Kos is being asked here to make a big decision. Will he go on to the dry tyres? I think so, Chris. I think this is the time now for those wet tyres to just give up the ghost and go for the dries.
I wouldn't be surprised if he does emerge on the dry tyre. It's certainly the tyre of the moment. I'm just making sure I have down who started on the wet tyre so we can compare how they work out later on, because there's still a chance of some differing strategies between these guys, depending on what they do in this stop. So remember, they don't have enough fuel for the full race distance. So they do have to come in for a refuel. They have the option to change tyres as well, and can confirm Igor Kos coming back out on slick tyres. But of course, those will be stone cold tyres, and he'll be coming out onto a wet bit of the racetrack. So he does still have to take it very easy for the first few corners and build that tyre temperature.
Yeah, I also want to say, look at Bosca, look at the gap to Cosford. He's closed that right back up, and in fact, as I say that, he's switching position with them. He's going around the outside of the Ferrari, and that is now a really telling sign. He's within frame here of the race leaders. So this is going to be a big moment in the story of this race here at Fuji. Again, pulling right up to the pit wall was those two Ford Mustangs. And Bosca is a man on a mission. In comes, it looks like somebody's coming out the pit lane. I believe that might be Federico Alberti, I question. Or is that going to be Conrad Kula? It's either one of the two. I'm trying to decipher. Yeah, just trying to decipher from my track, from the tracker there. But he's just now pulling off to the left-hand side to just let everyone through. He's back marker, of course.
What's the thinking here between the top four? Because Bosca is clearly the fastest driver on the track as he makes his way past Balash Erdely now and into fourth position. I don't see what the strategy is for these guys who are still out there on wet tyres. I mean, surely are they just thinking that, well, we're on the wrong tyre for now, may as well stick with it and try and gain a little bit later on rather than just jump on what everyone else is doing? Either they're much smarter than me, which is probably the solution, or they're on the wrong strategy.
I think they've got caught out, in all honesty, Chris, because they seem to be bassing away with each other. You just have a look at Paulik, Hoverson and Peterson. I think they've just waited for each other to react so long that they're now seeing a Ferrari go down the inside that started on pole, went back 30 seconds, and is now gaining on them completely. And I think they've just been staring at each other, waiting for each other to react for so long. All three of them have just been caught out. It's unbelievable. Now, David Bosca, who is now sitting in the toe of his fellow Ferrari 296 GT3, he's going to pull out to the right-hand side in just a moment in time, and will now see himself head down towards turn number 1 and up into the lead of the race from pole position down towards, I believe, 7th, back up into the race lead within 26 minutes. This race might be the definition of topsy-turvy, Chris.
I mean, absolutely extraordinary. So the pole sitter back in his rightful place, so to speak. It's safe to say that the other dry-tired cars are also starting to make their way through, because Mihai Neg is up to 6th position, and Ryan Woodrow is just on the fastest lap of the race as well, in 12th position. So it's all change out there still. There was a swap, meanwhile, between the two of the NGK Sparkplug livery cars. Nikolai Peterson moving ahead of Greg Hoverson. So Peterson, the Danish driver and Danish Supercars driver, runner-up in that championship last year with Berg Motorsports. As we've got more moves here. Mihai Neg, the Romanian, has now moved up to 5th position, was the fastest driver on the track a few moments ago. Mihai running the Romanian Dacian flag on his car, as are the other Walk Racing cars, the Dracul Wolf, which is the sort of dragon-esque decal you can see, as he's got past one of those Fords and up into 4th position. So dispatched of Hoverson, now on the back of Peterson for 3rd position. Down the 1.4 kilometre start and finish straight. Both of these cars powered by the 5.4 litre Coyote V8, but one on wet tyres and one on slicks, and through goes Mihai Neg up into 3rd position.
Indeed, I was just going to say the fastest lap to between the wet tyres to the dry tyres was 6.5 seconds. You're seeing how clear it is now. David Bosca has just gone and done a 41.3, so that is entirely telling. 7 seconds compared to the time of Alexander Paulik. That's day and night in terms of a difference. So I think I'm going to go back to what I said about 3 or 4 laps ago, is I think those wet tyre leaders have just been waiting for each other to blink for so long, they just didn't realise what was going on with the dry tyres. They were all waiting for each other to react. None of them did, and they've all caught themselves out.
Mihai Neg now up into 2nd position. There was 2 moves there in 3 corners for the Romanian, the 26-year-old who is now 8 seconds behind the race leader. This is on board with KaiZen Richardson, the sole Mercedes in the field, the American driver. And he is about to take Greg Hoverson on the inside in this final sector, coming through turns 14 and 15. See the Mercedes on the outside line there, and very nearly contact between the two cars as Hoverson slid his way out of there, but it's the 22-year-old from Nevada who manages to go through into 5th position. Hellraiser on YouTube, you may know him as. So this is the change here between Alexander Paulik, who has been leading the race for so long, and goes straight on at the first corner, and that is an open door for Nikolai Peterson to go through and take the place. But here comes KaiZen Richardson as well on the slick tyres, who rounds up Paulik and now is going to round up Peterson as well on the inside into turn 3 and take 3rd position.
Yeah, some superb driving there, but you're just seeing how superior the dry tyres are. So at this point, if you're a wet tyre runner, what do? You may have to just bite the bullet here and make your way into the pit lane here. So we'll just have to see what has happened here with KaiZen Richardson. He's gone slightly off the track, in fact. I think that was just a little bit of a wide moment there. He tries to adjust with his dry compound tyre, but yeah, you can see there he's leaving Pedersen in the dust here. So now 20 minutes left in the race, and we've had 17 laps. So the tyres have definitely gone through some time here, whether that be the wets, whether that be the dries, and now we're just trying to see if there's going to be any form of differences. But yeah, you just see in there Balaz Erdely, who's now in that Ford Mustang, just waiting to tippy-toe his way through this very, very tricky section. He's now got a Porsche there of Wout de Vos, who had an accident during qualifying. I don't know if anyone saw, but you can just maybe see from the screens of our presenters, our wonderful presenters. I saw a damaged Porsche with the front bent in, and that was in fact Wout de Vos, and he's now charging his way up the field. So it looks like at the moment he is 5th in terms of those dry runners, 8th on the row. So somebody has made their way into the pits as well. We'll confirm that in just a moment. I believe that's Cody Cosford.
Yeah, he's only the 2nd driver to come in. And we're 20 minutes from the checkered flag. We're more than halfway through the race. I am told we're not far away from some more rain arriving. So is that what everyone's been waiting for? And okay, let's say everybody jumps onto the wet tyre when that rain arrives. Well, still, Peterson and Paulik, they're now 24 seconds behind the race leader. So they've definitely lost out in this phase of the race.
We spoke about it at the beginning, at the pre-show. Be on the right tyre, the right conditions. I just think some of the drivers just didn't listen to that. So, yeah, they didn't follow what Bradley Philpott was saying, and they've kind of suffered the consequences. We'll have to see how this all kind of pans out. Danny Neo, who was involved in a lap 1, turn 1 crash at Silverstone, is actually now putting himself up to 4th. Lighted came into the Fuji Speedway weekend last in the championship, and we've had a bit of an accident. That's going to be the former race leader Paulik. Paulik has been smashed off, it seems like, by one of the I'm going to say one of the wet tyre runners, and that's going to be a massive disappointment for him. He's going to be so frustrated, and I wonder if that's going to be a call for the pit lane. As in comes Neg, it seems like the Romanian.
Yeah, from 2nd position. So what tyre does he choose to go on? Because they know that there's some rain forecast. Surely you wouldn't go back out on a slick now, but the wet tyre doesn't seem to be very good at the moment either. I don't know. What do you do? We've got a flurry of them in, though, because Nikolai Peterson, Greg Hoverson, Balázs Erdely, and Alexander Paulik, all of the wet tyre runners, are now into pit lane. So are they going to ditch the wet tyres and try and brave the slicks out in a slightly damper end to the race? Well, we'll find out later. Of course, stopping later does mean that you end up spending a bit less time refueling the car. And I can tell you for now that Peterson and Erdely have stuck with the wet tyres.
I'm sorry, Chris, but that really baffles my brain. You know, they've just been struggling for lap after lap after lap, and now those wet compound on tyres. So they're going to have to really figure out what is happening. Rain is apparently imminent, I'm hearing in my ear. It's just how vicious is that rain going to be, and is it going to come very quickly, or is it going to just take its time? Is it really going to like graduate over the course of 6 minutes? And even then it might just be pitter patter by the end of the 50 minutes. So a massive amount of questions where we now approach 15 minutes to go left in this race. The spray is seemingly picking up. I don't know if you saw that just off the back of Alexander Paulik. I think the spray is just starting to pick up now. So Will Pedersen, Erdely, Paulik, Hovsen, Cox will come back into this. It's seemingly a roll of the dice at this rate.
More drivers coming in: KaiZen Richardson, Danny Neo, Yuke DeVos, Ryan Woodrow, and Andrea Panini from second down to sixth. But race leader David Bosger staying out for now into the 139s in his Ferrari that continues to lead the way. And Woodrow has gone for the wet tyre, so he's made the switch, as has Yuke DeVos. So it seems like wets are now the tyres to be on, with 15 minutes remaining in this race. So maybe we can't just quite see how treacherous the conditions are becoming. There's a little bit more spray out there. I'm also just going to very briefly draw your attention back to Luciano Whitvet, who has been in pit lane for the last 21 minutes, presumably looking for repairs. And I think if he stays in there for another 4 minutes, he won't complete half race distance and he won't be eligible for points. So just to rub a little bit more salt in the Dutchman's wounds, he may not even leave Fuji with any points at all. As it stands, it would be Bosger who takes the championship lead as Paulik and one of the Mustangs come together. That was Greg Hoverson. They had just completed their stop a few laps ago, both on the wet tyre, and it's the Ford that gets pushed out.
Yeah, that's going to be massively unfortunate. We'll see who it is. It is, I believe, Gregory Hoverson. Just squeezes. I'm not going to lay the blame at anyone's door. I think it just two doesn't go into one. You know, there was not really much room for either of them to kind of go with. And the rain has now come down here, and this is going to be massive here. Bosca is into the pits as well. Is he going to be coming out on those dry compound tyre? I think so, Chris. This is going to be absolutely massive. He may have just missed the window by a minute here, but look at his leads. I'm being told actually he did not change tyres. I'm just seeing that gap coming down rapidly, so we'll have to see how that all pans out. Bosca is now on the race circuit here in that beautiful yellow and dark blue Ferrari, but will he be able to hold on?
So only Yuke DeVos and Ryan Woodrow went from the dry tyre to the wet. Now, David Bosger, Mihai Neg, KaiZen Richardson, Danny Neo, and Igor Kos, your top five at the moment. How quickly are they going to regret staying on the dry tyre? Because look how dark it's gotten all of a sudden. We can see the rain starting to come down, and we'll take a look at the lap times, because it's not entirely fair, because some people have only done an outlap at the moment. But looking at the sector times, I think it's fair to say that the wet tyres are not far away from becoming the superior tyre once again.
Yeah, indeed. I'm just having a look at some of the timing, but of course it will take a while for some of the tyres to come into its own here. So we're just waiting for maybe a couple of laps, and we'll just continue to have a look at the information that we're given on our timer screens there with a slight update. Very slightly wet is the weather information we're big given, but I don't know how this is going to come about here, because it's going to be whatever happens for the next 12 minutes deciphers how this race is going to go. If it pours down heavy, then I think the advantage is going to go to the likes of DeVos and Peterson, and I wonder if it maybe just graduates over time. if those hot, dry tyres will be able to keep in the zone until maybe that last lap or two, which by that time Bosca may be able to hang on for a race win here. But continuous battles all over the road here. You're seeing Andrea Panini just trying to hang on around the outside of Hoverson, and they're both on the wet compound tyres, so this is how interesting this is going to turn out, so keep an eye on this one.
So everyone's now done their stop. It's about 11 minutes to go in this race as Panini gets up the inside into the final corner on the Ford. Gregory Hoverson, how different his race looks from about 5 minutes ago, down in 12th position at the moment, getting very, very close. It's the flat 6 in the rear of the Porsche against the Coyote V8 at the front of the Ford. Absolutely level pegging as they make their way down the 1.4 kilometer start and finish straight, but it's Panini, the Italian, on the inside going into turn 1, and Hoverson with a bit of curb having to yield that one. So nearly 18 seconds is the advantage for David Bosca, the Belgian, out at the front of the field. That could be critical for the closing stages of this race. It is Mihai Neg in second position in the Ford and Caden Richardson in the Mercedes that is in third position ahead of Danny Neo and Igor Kos, who are all on dry tyres as it stands. Joop de Vos, the first of the wet tyre runners, and 54 seconds from the race leader, who's back in pit lane, surely bailing for the wet tyre. Now, is anyone else going to make that switch?
Yep, this is going to be a crucial stop here. David Bosca is going to lose a lot of time here, but he's going to have to gain that back with his driving the next wet tyre. I believe 52 seconds behind. That's going to be Joop de Vos, the Dutchman in the Porsche. So we'll have to see how that all kind of pans out. Look at that, Neg Richardson, Neo is all... and yeah, Neo is responding. Igor Kos is the only one staying out. So it looks like the German driver is going to risk it all here. 10 minutes remaining. That is going to be a very, very long 10 minutes. You'll probably be able to get 6 laps. I don't think they'll be able to go 6 laps here. Through goes Joop de Vos here. And now exiting, David Bosca will head in towards turn number 1, but will not be the case here. In toward the net race lead will be Joop de Vos. What about Pedersen, who's had a really, really strong showing last time out of Silverstone? Unfortunately, a penalty denied him a podium, but he'll have to slot there into 4th. The race is coming all together now, Chris.
Oh, what a thrilling finale we have here for the second race of the Crown Racing Series. The rain here at Fuji has just made this absolutely captivating as we have Alexander Paulik going side by side with Cody Cosford. I think David Bosca's ended up losing position to Nikolai Pedersen as well, because Pedersen's now showing in 3rd position. So that's a costly stop that Bosca had to make. I don't think Igor Kos is going to be out there in the lead for much longer, because he's already lost 2 seconds or so on this lap so far, made that 3 seconds. So it won't be long before Joop de Vos manages to close down what is now a 10-second lead for Kos, who has stayed out on the slick tyre. I commend your bravery, Mr. Kos, but I don't think it's quite going to work out for you.
No, I think he's just trying to maybe do a little bit of trying to better his position. Oh, that's a bit of a hip and shoulder there. Alexander Paulik. Paulik's going to try around the outside now in those wet conditions. Try and find where you can maybe find the grip. And they say use the karting line to go on that outside line, find the grip, avoid all the puddles, and then try and just work your way around the outside. But here comes Igor Kos. He comes over the timing line. I think yeah, he's gone up 7 places from his starting position, so I think he's just trying to improve on his starting spot. But this is now starting to become very, very difficult. He's doing 2-minute lap times here, and at this rate he'll probably be able to get in maybe 4 laps. I want to estimate, but yeah, of course we know that Igor Kos is going to go through on him, because look at that, 11 seconds faster than the Ford Mustang. But in fact, Igor Kos has now gone off the track here, and I think that's very, very telling. Just have a look at the tyre graphic here on that left-hand side. Kos has gone too wide. He's now going to hand over a whole heap of positions.
Duke de Vos through into the lead then in the Porsche, and off the road goes Igor Kos now and into the barriers. The gamble to stay on the slick tyre has absolutely not worked, plummeting down the order and now damage to the Ford Mustang. So Duke de Vos now the Dutch driver who leads by just under 2 seconds to Nikolai Pedersen. Oh, more cars going off. Cody Cosford and Alexander Paulik as well.
Yeah, let's have a look at this one because they were side by side. They were really battling hard a couple of laps ago. Oh, it looks like, they've just, Paulik's understeered into it, it seems like, and then just started whacking the door of the of his fellow Ferrari, and then they just spun round like a ballet performance.
Well, plenty of drama for the highlights reel for both Alexander Paulik and Cody Cosford in this race. Unfortunately, now one for the lowlights reel as well. This could be the change for second place here with David Bosger trying to get back up past Nikolai Pedersen. Remember, he lost the place to the Mustang on his outlap when he went onto the wet tyres, trying to get them up to temperature. He has outdragged the Ford for now, but the Ford back in the slipstream down the start and finish straight. Bosger defends to the inside, Pedersen to the outside, and it is the former race leader who does just manage to hold ahead going into the first corner. So now the question is, can he close down Duke de Vos and try to regain the lead in the race? It's 5 minutes left on the clock as Igor Kos brings his car back into pit lane for repairs and probably a change to wet tyres. But 5 minutes to go. The battle is on between Duke de Vos and David Bosger.
Yep, this is going to be very, very, very tough one in terms of the weather conditions. Oh, that's a big moment there. Pedersen's trying to go up the inside. Oh, I think he's going to do bumper to bumper there, front bumper to rear bumper there. I thought Bosger was going to go sliding on at the hairpin there, but evidently he's managed to just keep on the road there. And also kudos to Nikolai Pedersen for not ramming the back of the Ferrari. He's very, very eager here, Chris, to try and find a way through. And I wonder if he's going to be able to just handle the mice of that Ford, because of course it is front wheel in these wet conditions. So I wonder what it's going to be like for them in those dampening conditions. Now we're just seeing Cody Cosford here. He's battling for PA and he's got Paulik. So the two that collided a couple of moments ago, they're now back with each other, just sniffing all the fumes coming off of that Ferrari 296 GT3.
Great shot once again. It's Cosford and Paulik still locked in a battle for 8th position. Cosford will be hoping he's done the fuel calculations correctly this time, as he crawled to the finish line last time out at Silverstone. It's crazy to think that Paulik was leading so much at the early stages of this race. So he looked up the inside going into the final corner there. These two have kept us entertained for a really, really long time in this one. 3.5 minutes left on the clock. The lead gap 3.2 seconds as Bosger lost out by a second to Duke de Vos while he was battling with Pedersen. Let's see with a bit of clean air whether Bosger can try and close down that gap again, but I don't think Pedersen is going to have let him have it his own way. And it's Porsche leading Ferrari, leading Ford as we head towards the checkered flag. And yet a change again for second place, Pedersen back through.
Yeah, that's going to be crucial there. We knew how mighty Nikolai Pedersen was going to be. He was all over the rear of Bosger, and now he's just managed to make that move, which I sense was going to be happening probably in the last 2 or 3 laps. He was right on the rear end of that Ferrari. Is he going to be able to get it slowed down in towards the chicane? They take the wide line, try and find the grip to tighten up the car. And then they're just trying to find the way through. But again, that Ferrari sticks on the inside line, but gets pushed off there. And it looks like Pedersen's just saying, absolutely no, you don't. The Ferrari finds a way through. And Bosger fighting for all of his might. The Ford Mustang will try that outside line, try the karting line up this is super tricky section. He's going to have that inside line, but with the outside line potentially more grip, Bosger is really fighting this one all the way through. Now onto towards the main straight we go. 2 minutes left of this one here, folks. Don't go away. We've got a grand grand slam finish here for second place as well. And looks like Pedersen's going to go defensive. Bosca with that Ferrari is going to really just try and side drive. It seems like that Ford Mustang is going to be bravery on the brakes down in towards the first corner here.
Big braking maneuver on the outside from David Bosco, who's still trying to get this move done on Nikolai Pedersen. Still, they run side by side on the exit of the corner. I mean, Robert Kubica and Felipe Massa eat your heart out as they bang wheels heading towards turn 3. Again, Bosco goes through, but a cutback from the Ford means that he gets the better drag out of there. And around 100 are the wide line being taken by Pedersen, who's just got half a car length in front, now a full length in front, and manages to pull clear of Bosca. But I'm sure that the man who is third in the championship, poised to take the championship lead, I think, regardless of how this battle plays out. Remember, both these guys were on the podium on the road in Silverstone, and it will be the same again here. So long as they don't wipe each other out, they've got a lap and a half still to try and sort this one out, and still it's Pedersen wide through the chicane, but just keeping Bosca at bay.
Yeah, but Bosca looks like he's going to be really strong in this section. We saw this a lap ago. I think he's going to be able to potentially find a way through, unless Pedersen, the Dane, is going to bring out his full Viking, try and maybe go fully defensive. Someone else is going fully defensive. There is Alexander Pulik, really trying to shut the fender face for Cosworth. But we go back to this battle for a second again. Bosca still side by side, but he's now going to duck into the slipstream of Nikolai Pedersen, and they make their way down on towards turn number 1, and it looks like the clock has ticked 50. This is going to be the last lap here, but we have got this move to be made here. Will he go to the inside line, Bosca, or will he try that outside line and potentially try and look for the dry conditions? He tries to turn in, but there is a Ford Mustang. There is a whole Ford Mustang just sitting on that inside corner, and again, a great defense. A big wall being put up there by Pedersen, saying absolutely no you don't. In toward 3 they go. Bosca still holding on. This is going to go on for a while, but it looks like the Ferrari now slips ahead.
Great battling once again to close out here, the Crown Racing Series. We are pretty sure that Joop de Vos is going to win this one, but what order will the drivers behind him be on the podium as Bosca and Pedersen continue to battle it out? It is the Ferrari that is just in front going into turn 6. Now, for all the talk of the Ford's superior straight line speed, they seem to have been pretty evenly matched so far in this one. Now, this is a part of the racetrack I think Pedersen has been a little bit quicker in, but Bosca is starting to pull away a little bit now as they break towards turn 10, the slowest corner on the racetrack. And Pedersen is surely going to start running out of opportunities because the Ferrari seems to be very good in that third and final sector of the racetrack. So as it stands, Bosca in second place, and I believe poised to take the championship lead away from Luciano Whitvet, who I don't think is going to be coming away from him with any points at all. How much more different could it be from the first race at Silverstone? It has been an absolutely joyous race to watch, with the different strategies between slick tyres and wet tyres, and the battles on track that have just been absolutely superb to watch as well. Here comes Joop de Vos. The checkered flag is being readied. He wins race 2 of the Crown Racing Series at Fuji Speedway. An extraordinary maiden victory for the Dutchman. Second across the line will be David Bosca once again, as it was at Silverstone, with the fastest lap of the race. He takes the championship lead with it as well, and Nikolai Pedersen has to settle for third position after an almighty scrap with Bosca in the closing stages of that race. Adam, what a phenomenal 50 minutes of racing we've just watched.
Oh, can we do that all again, Chris? Because that was absolutely superb. It is double Dutch delight. Of course, Whitvogt, who won in Silverstone. It's Joop de Vos, who wins in Fuji. It's going to be a serious party in Holland, and I can imagine how well they rave over there.
Joop de Vos, who finished 6th at Silverstone and didn't really have a look in for the podium at any point in the race, but has come here, played the strategy perfectly as well. Remember, he was the first of the slick tyre runners to bail onto the wet tyre. I don't think anyone saw that being the correct strategy, but that's how it's played out. Bosca, I'm sure, will be thinking, what could have been. He led a fair chunk of that race, and 4.6 seconds shy in the end at the checkered flag. After a great ding-dong with Nikolai Peterson. Balázs Erdely once again in 4th position. It was 4th on the road for Erdely in Silverstone. And settles for 4th here with Ryan Woodrow after a very dramatic race in 5th position, and Gregory Hoverson. Oh man, what could have been there? Let's run through the full race result then. It's Joop de Vos for the first time, a race winner in the Crown Racing Series. 4.6 seconds to the good over David Bosger, ahead of Nikolai Peterson. 5 seconds away from the race leader. Porsche, Ferrari and Ford all on the top 3 on the podium. Balázs Erdely in 4th position. Ryan Woodrow in 5th, Gregory Hoverson in 6th position. Then Andrea Panini, the second of the Porsches, in 7th position. Alexander Paulik settles for 8th position, ahead of Cody Cosford and Danny Neo. Completing the top 10, Caden Richardson and Mihai Neg. Their late gamble didn't work out for them in the end. Igor Kos, we saw damage for him. He had to come across the line in 13th position in the end. And then we had dramas for Conrad Kula, Federico Alberti, Luciano Whitvet. The big drama there with the championship leader not scoring points in this one. Kyle Domark, who never really seemed to get off the mark in that one. An extraordinary race here from Fuji Speedway. We're back in a month's time to go to the Daytona International Speedway. But for now, let's head back to the studio and look back on that race.
What on earth did we just watch, Shannon? How long's the post show? We need 2 hours. That was incredible.
Yes.
I've got a lot of talking points here. I know we're going to go and talk to the top 3 in just a moment, so I'm looking forward to that. But oh my goodness, we thought the rain was going to play into the strategy. You know, we thought it'd be significant. It was way more significant than I predicted, certainly. Strategy all over the place. At different points in the race, different strategies looked like they were definitely the right one and then the wrong one. On-track incidents, amazing racing, amazing. The final few laps were some of the best racing I've ever seen. And in general, a big swing in the championship as well. So,
yeah, it was definitely so unpredictable. Whilst we were watching the show, we were just screaming and yelling and kicking our feet about, you know, how crazy it turned out. But I'm excited to do a debrief.
I'm looking forward to finding out from these top 3 what made them choose their strategies, because clearly, certainly the top 2 there had wildly different strategies, and they've ended up pretty close together in the grand scheme of things. At the end, they're only 5 seconds apart, and most of those 5 seconds was because Bosca was in a massive battle with Pedersen. So, yeah, wildly varying strategies that converged to being pretty similar in the end. And we had other drivers that had huge mistakes that actually ended up somewhere in the top 5. We don't know about penalties yet. We don't know what any kind of stewards' decisions are going to be. There was certainly some contact, which I think looks like it probably would be penalties, but we don't have any confirmation from stewards or anything, so we'll leave that to them. But can't wait to talk to these drivers in a moment. Claire, what did you think?
I mean, I'm still just getting my breath back. That was amazing. Like you said, can't wait to start talking about strategy, see what was going on. The different drivers, like we say, Phil, that started on the slicks or the wets. I mean, not to say that you were right, but you were right with some of your predictions through that. And I'm sure you will be more than happy to talk about those as well. I also want to know, there's a couple of the drivers like Pedersen, Paulik and Hoverson, why they didn't pit. I want to have a talk about that. The pit stop, we were talking, you and I, Phil, throughout the race about how it was a really long pit stop. So I'd love to have a little talk about that as well. And also why some drivers decided to stay out on wets and why they chose to change their tyres when they changed their tyres and why they started on the tyre they started. There is so much to talk about.
Okay, I think it sounds like we've actually got the top 3 ready to talk to, so maybe we can get some answers.
Exciting. Yeah.
Do we have Joop de Vos there to talk to? Joop, are you there?
Joop, how are you doing? You know, we're breathless after seeing that one. What an incredible race. I mean, where did we start? The tyre strategy, the wet from dry to wet again. Talk me through your race.
I gambled to start on dries because I was hoping I could get back on the end of the first stint, and that worked. I had an unfortunate contact in, I think it was lap 1, because I just understeered and had a little contact, and then it spun a cow around, so sorry about that, but not intentional. And then just dry, and at the pit stop I was like, okay, I hope it's going to rain. It was a bit of a gamble because I was pretty far back and it worked. And with Nikolai, with used tires behind, I just could pull away, so that was nice.
So I have a question, So just confirm to me, you started on the slick, so you were one of the drivers that had to suffer in those early stages. And when you eventually did pull the trigger and come in for your pit stop, you gambled on wets when the track wasn't yet wet. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so
but,
you were
I had the
hoping
radar
for
on, so you could see it was like 1 or 2 laps, and it was heavy rain. So that's why I gambled on it, and thinking it was going to be wet enough for the wets.
And that was the differentiator between your strategy and Bosga's, which initially looked the same, but he pitted for slicks. So he was gambling.
No, he kept the same tires. So he didn't change. And then,
exact. So yeah, precisely. So he came out of the pits on slick tires, hot slicks, but you knew, or you were hoping, or you had a very strong indication it was about to pour with rain. And that's kind of the defining point in the race, because we didn't know. There were so many strategies you could have chosen, and it seems like the best one in the end was slicks to wets. Simple as that.
Yeah, simple as that. And I chose it because on the radar it was really close to rain, and I saw the guys like Nikolai pitted a lap earlier than me, and I could see on my overlays that they were going for wets. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna take the same gamble, and then we'll see where we end up.
Brad, you make a really good point there. How many conversations are you having before a race like this, coming into the second round of this series? Now, with so many points as well to your name, what kind of conversations were you having, knowing that the strategy was going to be a bit wild for this one?
I'm solo, so I wasn't. It was in my
so you're
head,
just talking to yourself.
Yeah, it was just in my head, but I was just focusing on my driving and checking the radar and my fuel every lap, and see what the others do for pace, and then made my own strategy call. And I knew I needed to take a risk because David was really far up the road. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna take the risk and we'll see. And it worked out. So I'm really happy with the pace as well in the end with the Porsche.
Yeah, speaking of the Porsche, you're one of not very many drivers in this series to have selected the Porsche. How did you find that helped you or hindered you at various stages in this race today? Is this a race where the Porsche was the car to have? Or did you just make the better strategic decisions in the race?
I think in this race the car didn't really matter. I mean, it's rear engine, so I have more traction, so that helped in the wet. But on the dry, it was slower. So I was keen on it being wet because I knew, okay, it's good in the wet, always the Porsche. But I mean, we need to see the next few rounds how the Porsche is like. We know the Mustang.
Brad and I spoke ahead of the race. Oh, sorry, Shannon, go for it.
Sorry, I was just wondering, you finished in 6th at Silverstone, and obviously you finished in 1st now. What happened, or what did you plan differently for this race versus the one in Silverstone?
Nothing, to be honest. I knew Silverstone was the worst track for me with the Porsche, so I made the best of it on that track, and I know with the tracks coming what I can do with the Porsche. So it was more of a tactical decision. I knew the Porsche was struggling in Silverstone the first round, so we'll see what the next rounds are going to be like.
You just finally, as I was just going to mention, Brad and I were talking about you having the only Porsche in the field. Was there a bit of a concern when you looked at the sheet at Silverstone and thought, have I made the right choice here? What was your feeling on that?
Yes. It's like, yes, I have my concerns, but seeing Andrea, who's the only one with the Porsche as well, being quick yesterday in free practice in the wet, I knew, okay, it's going to be all right for this round, and we'll see on the next one with Daytona, Spa, Monza, and Brazil. we'll see.
Congratulations, you. Good job. And good luck for the rest of the season. We'll see you at Daytona. So I believe
we have
I think
David
we
Polska.
I think we do. David, are you there?
No, we'll be speaking about there with you about the Porsche, but it's interesting to think, isn't it, that he's so right that actually we're going to see how these cars start to
tell us about his
perform
extremely
as the
exciting race.
season
Sorry
goes
to talk
on.
over you, Claire, if you can still hear me. David, for much of that race, you were the star. You were the person making up time. You were the highest slick tyre runner. You were just clinging on, and then we had that changeover in conditions around about 15 minutes into the race. Were you confident from the outset that slick tyres were the way to go?
Hello everyone, and no, I was not confident. I had no idea if it was going to work or not. I was hoping for the rain to really come the latest possible, and then I knew I just had to keep it under 40 seconds, which is more or less what they would lose if they would like to change onto any tire, the slick in that case. So yeah, I guess I was lucky. It dried up quite quickly. I also saw at the beginning it was quite dry, and I ended up losing like 33, 34 seconds at the beginning, and then yeah, I had to come back and then overtake everyone, and yeah, I lost a bit of time there. But yeah, I was not confident, but I took the risk to. Everyone was on wets, so I was like, I'm not gonna do the same thing.
And from my point of view, it looked like it was going to be a clear win. But there was one crucial moment, as we just heard from Joop de Vos there, and that was your decision to not change to wets when you eventually did come in to the pits for your mandatory stop. What was the thinking behind staying with your hot slicks there?
Because it was 10 minutes left, and I thought it wouldn't rain so heavy, so quick. And even if it did, like I don't think anyone would have stayed on the same wets, which was in the case of Nikolai, who stayed on the same wets all the race. And then I did not thought somebody will change on the wets at the right time and recover. You know, I think to P2 I had already 30-second gap or something like that. So I was very surprised to see that even after changing to the wets, I was not P1. So yeah, a little mistake there. But anyways, P2 is still good for the championship, so I'm happy.
And talk us through your battle in the final 2 to 3 laps with Pedersen, because it was looking touch and go as to whether or not you were going to take, initially maybe come back to P1, and then when it became clear you were battling with Pedersen, it looked like it was a fight for second place. Were there any points there where you thought you might end up in 15th place and in the barriers?
No. Not that, I mean, I know we race hard, but every time was like very clean, I think, from both of us on the limits. But I think that's great racing with sports cars, where you can do door to door and bang. And I was speaking with him on the waiting room, and we just had fun, and it's the most important thing at the end. Even if I finished P3, I would have still been very happy to have such a good battle at the end. So no, not anything about finishing in the barrier. Definitely a bit upset that I had to fight again after already not knowing if I was gonna make it with the slick. So I was a bit upset to not change to the wet at the right moment. But yeah, it was great fighting. I enjoyed it a lot, and yeah, my tires were quite cold, so it was very easy to make mistakes, and it was getting wetter and wetter, and I was pushing, and I had a couple of moments, but it was all to have fun.
So this is 2 races in a row now where you've come home second place on the road. It looks like you'll keep the trophy this time. Are you going to come back at Daytona and take your maiden victory at the next round?
Here was one of the places where I knew I could get a victory, and I did not get it because I know Fuji very, very well, and I think I take good decisions in terms of starting with the tires, and I think I'm also quite good on the wet. So I thought it was going to be a little bit of an easier win, just because I know very well this place. But in Daytona, it's just slipstream, and
and the cars are quite different there as well. So I think anyone can win in Daytona basically. So it will all be. I will go in Daytona like I came here also, and like I started the championship, just low expectations, and we'll see what we can do.
Well, congratulations for another very, very strong result. We don't have the championship standings right here, but I'm confident you're extremely high up them, and we look forward to seeing you right out at the front again at the next round.
Congratulations.
So next up, we've got Pedersen
from Denmark,
our third position driver today.
Welcome. Hi, Pedersen. Welcome and congratulations for getting in third place. Yeah, that was such an exciting show to watch. I think I'm just interested in seeing what your thoughts are between your final lap battle between Bosga and you.
Few laps that just shows how good racing you can have in these GT3 cars. Like, it was door to door, and every corner we were trying to get through so we can go and win this shit. But yeah, I thought it was quite good racing.
There was one moment between, if I remember correctly, between turn 1 and turn 2 where I'm pretty sure it was your car was quite sideways whilst door banging with David. How much steering angle did you have on in that incident? It looked like you were 90 degrees opposite lock at one point.
We got this net codes, so even if you touch a little bit, it just yanks your wheel, like even if he didn't just smash into you. But it feels like it in the steering wheel, and sometimes the car will throw out like that.
Well done for hanging on to it, because obviously you've secured yourself a podium. My question to you, because I don't have a photographic memory, and there were a lot of strategies to keep abreast of there. Talk us through what your tyre choice was. Did you go for the wets onto slicks back to wets? Did you start on slicks? Or am I correct in thinking you were one of the drivers who went out and then had to stay out on kind of worn out wets in the beginning? Is that right?
Yeah, that was the thing that when we did the qualifying session, we saw it was quite wet. Like, there was a lot of, quite wet. And so when we joined for the race start, we had made the decision to go onto wets again, because we thought that it cannot be possible to go onto dries. But then somehow they made it work. And we saw on the radar that there was going to come some rain, but it came 10 minutes later than it should have. And if it just came 10 minutes earlier, then we could have then it would be much faster to stay on wets the whole time, like I did.
And is this, so that's the reason why then, we were questioning it back here in the studio, why some drivers were staying out there on wets that were clearly miles slower than the slick tyre runners were doing at that point. It looked obvious to us that a pit stop slightly earlier would at least stop the bleeding, would stop you losing even more time. But was the danger, because you knew or you heavily suspected there was another rain shower coming, that doing an additional pit stop would still be slower than losing 5 seconds a lap for the time being?
Yeah, I just knew that if I went onto dry tires, it was just over. I'll be P10 or something. So I had to gamble on it and just believe on. I knew it was going to rain again, and on the radar it was like yellow and red rain. So it's not light rain, so it will come down fast, and like we also saw in 2 laps, he needed to pit again.
And in the end, it proved that a couple of those strategies did converge, and it didn't matter which one you were on, you ended up fighting for those top 3 positions. So was there anything you could have done to maybe take that second spot rather than the third? Was there any moment in that battle that you would change if you could rerun it?
Yeah, when he overtook us, when he was on the dries, I should have closed the door a bit more, but he just pushed me right into my teammate. So he pushed his way through. If I could have held him up a bit more there, I think I could have done a bit more. But we never know.
Well, congratulations.
Yeah, you did amazing either way. Congratulations.
You certainly put on a show for us, and good luck for the next round. So I think we've got Claire back, and we've got a few talking points before we end tonight's show, and there's way too much to talk about to go through through the race in its entirety. But let's just pick out some of the key moments in round 2 of the Crown Racing Series. Claire, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes, I just
Welcome
decided to disappear just briefly, which was a shame because I was enjoying listening to the interview. So, but yeah, we've got so much still to talk about. I mean, Brad, where do you want to start?
Well, I want to start on what I think is quite a controversial point here. Now, I have no idea, once again, what the stewards are going to say about this in the end. I don't even know whether it's under investigation, but we saw someone finished the race today in 5th position, and that was Ryan Woodrow. He started off having an absolute nightmare, and part of that nightmare was actually taking out of the race the championship leader at the time, Luciano Whitver. So there was this moment where there were people out on slick tyres at the beginning of the race. He was one of the drivers on the slicks, and they were kind of trying to cool their tyres. Sorry, no, he actually might have been on the wets. I don't even remember at this point. Whatever tyres he was on, he braked for turn 1 on a white painted line, and that spat him 90 degrees to the left into Whitver and took Whitver out of the race. However, completely in contrast to Whitver's fortune, Ryan then went on to finish the race in 5th position, somehow avoided any significant damage. So that's my first talking point. Do you think a penalty might be coming his way? Because there was some controversial moments involving Woodrow again in this race.
Yeah, it was interesting, wasn't it? He actually got caught on the wet line and basically spun, which then went into Luciano Whitver and basically ruined the championship leader's race. He spent the rest of it in the pit lane looking for repairs, hoping for repairs, and unfortunately, has come away, I'm pretty sure, with no points. But look, it's not for me. We do have stewards, obviously, that can have a conversation, and they will be looking at all of this at the moment to decide whether a penalty is going to come the Americans' way. We saw a few different incidents. I mean, Ryan Woodrow being one of them. Another issue there was just at the end, I want to say, well, Igor Kos, I think, is another conversation we should have, and he's not having a penalty at all, but he stayed out on those slicks, didn't he? And then got damaged and lost it. I was trying to think who the other one was that had a bit of a ding-dong.
Yeah, I think I can take this one. I think it was Erdeyi early on. I think he went down the inside of Cosford in the middle of the track. And it was quite an obvious, from my point of view, it's quite an obvious driver at fault. Sometimes these things can go either way, and you can judge, it's a racing incident, or there's this kind of 50-50 in terms of the blame. This one did look a little bit more cut and dry. It looked like Erdeyi was down the inside and just punted Cosford around. Although at that stage in the race, there was a lot of action happening. So, there's a possibility that it was a different driver, but I'm pretty sure that's, from our notes, that's who it was. There was also a key point in the race, in the early laps, with the drivers out on slicks losing control. There's all sorts going on. But a key point in terms of the strategy was around 15-16 minutes into the race, when there was clearly this crossover happening in terms of the pace of the dry runners and obviously the people who have been out from the beginning on the wet, loving life and pulling away massively. So there was that slick tyre crossover. That really started off the kind of second half of the field, gave them some hope. Because up until that point, the race looked lost. It looked like it didn't matter whether it dried. They were so far behind, they were never going to make up that deficit. As it turned out, the pit stops took ages. So actually, as we heard from our second place driver there, Bosga, he knew as long as he stayed within 40 to 50 seconds of the wet tyre runners, he could still make that strategy work.
I kind of both noticed that halfway through the race, and we were like, hang on a minute. That's a long pit stop. And Pedersen, Paulik and Hoverson, all three of those drivers, they didn't pit at a time which would have been the great time to pit if you had those tyres. Igor Kos was the first one to come in at lap 13. But Brad, we were talking about lap 12 was probably the most ideal time to come in and change your tyres. We both had a conversation saying, well, why didn't they pit? And then you look and say, well, actually, they've got this 1 minute pit stop, which is going to cost them an incredible amount of time during the race. So it was one of those races where so much was going on, and it was kind of hard to kind of pay attention to what everyone was doing. But that was definitely something that stuck out to me. The pit stops causing them a bit of trouble. The other thing that I thought was really interesting is when they started to decide to change to wet. So when the rain started coming back down, Brad, we saw both Woodrow and Joop de Vos, which saw him eventually win the race. So it was an amazing decision to make. They went back to wets. So it was a real gamble of trying to work out around lap 20, when this sudden deluge of rain came down, when was the best time to come in. And Joop de Vos got it right. Is there anyone out there that you think got it wrong?
I think a lot of people got it wrong. It'd be difficult to pinpoint one person in particular. I actually think, judging from some of those interviews we just heard, and I don't know whether you could hear them with your connection issues, but I think some of those drivers, or maybe all of those wet tyre runners from early on, actually didn't even change. I think they stayed on the same set of wets, which Bosca was quite surprised that they were able to make them last until the end. He thought that they would have been destroyed in the dry running early on, but I think they actually just left the same tyres on, fueled the car, and then went back out again. And that proved to be, that was what they were waiting for. Whilst we were sitting here thinking, why aren't they pitting? They're hemorrhaging time. They should be in. You know, it doesn't matter if they're going to have to do an extra stop. As it turns out, with such a long straight, and the difference between being on track at full speed and crawling down the pit lane at a low speed, it was such a big time loss for a pit stop that actually them staying out and losing that time did turn out to be the right thing. They were being sensible, because it meant they only had to do the one pit stop. And as we saw, the different strategies converged at the end, and we had several drivers all on track together, fighting over the same piece of tarmac, having got there in entirely different ways. So, yeah, in terms of people who threw things away, I think there were some people who had bad luck. I think early on, our championship leader at the time, after round one, Whitver, he was on the same strategy as Bosca, who went on to fight for the win, certainly. If he hadn't got embroiled in those early lap skirmishes and ultimately been taken out by being down there in the field battling with people, we might have seen him up there somewhere. So that's maybe a missed opportunity. At the least, you would have expected him to bank solid points, and as it turns out, he's had a DNF. So that's someone who's going to be going away from here with a little bit of a disappointed feeling. I don't know, maybe Cody Cosford's one that was fighting in that top 5 early on. He ended up 9th, so still stayed in the top 10. I think that's a very similar position to where he finished at Silverstone. But for a long while, it looked like he wasn't going to finish. He was having some kind of mechanical problem there where he was blinking. So hopefully that can be sorted out for next time. But we've definitely seen a little bit of an overturned form book from some drivers. I can't wait to see the championship table.
I am so excited to see how this championship starts shaking up. We can't go, though, without talking about Daytona. Shannon, Brad, what are your thoughts on the fact we head to Daytona next, which is a very interesting track, actually?
I don't know about you, Shannon. Daytona's one of my favourite tracks for a car like this. It's used for endurances all the time. This is a semi-endurance, being nearly an hour long, isn't it? They're in sports cars. We know that these cars are suited to that track very well, but we've got this massive, epic, high-speed slipstreaming section. It's going to be great. I can't wait.
Yeah.
And we might see another upset. So roll on, Daytona.
Yeah, I mean, I think weather wouldn't be that much of a problem in Florida, or it wouldn't be that big of a, strategy point for the racers to look at, because, obviously in Florida, it's all rainbows and sunshine. So maybe that wouldn't be that big of an issue.
It'll be another very different race.
Yes.
So I think until then, we'll be heading off, and we'll look forward to seeing the championship standings. Thanks for joining us, Claire.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
And from us here in the studio, Crown Racing Series Round 2. Thanks for joining us at home.
Thank you joining us at Fuji Speedway. Thank you.